A man walks into a cafe wearing a faded sweatshirt, old sneakers, and a watch that costs less than a dinner for two. Nobody pays much attention to him. He orders a coffee, opens his laptop, and spends an hour quietly working in the corner. A few tables away sits someone wearing designer clothing, a luxury watch, and carrying the latest phone. Heads turn. People notice. The appearance sends a message. If you asked most people which of the two is wealthier, many would choose the second person. Yet, in the real world, the answer is often far less obvious. One of the strangest truths about money is that genuine wealth frequently becomes less visible as it grows. Not because wealthy people are trying to hide, not because they dislike nice things, but because at a certain point, people who understand money begin optimizing for something entirely different. They stop trying to look rich and start trying to become rich. The distinction sounds small. In reality, it changes everything. Because looking rich and being rich are often competing goals. Every dollar spent convincing others that you're successful is a dollar that can no longer work for your future. Every financial decision becomes a choice between appearance and ownership. And for decades, behavioral economists have observed the same pattern repeatedly. The people who accumulate lasting wealth often behave very differently from what society expects. They drive ordinary cars, live in homes they can comfortably afford, wear simple clothing, avoid unnecessary displays of status, and sometimes they look surprisingly average. Meanwhile, many people who appear wealthy are trapped in a financial cycle that keeps them permanently dependent on their next paycheck. This is why looking poor, or at least refusing to look rich, can become one of the most powerful financial advantages a person can possess. Because the greatest wealth-building tool is not a stock. It is not a business. It is not even a high income. It's the ability to resist the pressure to perform wealth for other people. And that pressure is far stronger than most people realize. Humans are social creatures. For most of history, survival depended on belonging to a group. Being accepted mattered. Being respected mattered. Being admired mattered. Thousands of years later, those instincts remain deeply embedded inside us. The problem is that modern consumer culture has learned how to monetize them. Companies no longer sell products. They sell identity. A watch is not marketed as a timekeeping device. A car is not marketed as transportation. A handbag is not marketed as storage. Instead, these products are presented as symbols, signals, proof, evidence that you are successful, attractive, important, sophisticated, or accomplished. The product itself becomes secondary. What matters is what it says about you. This creates a powerful psychological trap, because status is one of the few desires that can never be fully satisfied. If you buy something to solve hunger, eventually you stop being hungry. If you buy something to stay warm, eventually you become warm. But if you buy something to gain status, there is no finish line. Someone always has something newer. Someone always has something bigger. Someone always has something more expensive. The goalpost keeps moving, and people spend years chasing it. Researchers studying social comparison have repeatedly found that individuals evaluate their success not only through absolute outcomes, but also relative to those around them. In other words, earning $100,000 can feel incredible until you discover your neighbors earn $150,000. Suddenly, nothing changed, yet everything feels different. This is where many financial problems begin. Not with poverty, not with low income, but with comparison. A person earning a modest salary may feel financially secure until they start comparing themselves with others. Then the pressure starts. The car feels outdated. The apartment feels small. The phone feels old. The wardrobe feels inadequate. And spending begins not because of necessity, but because of perception. The fascinating part is that perception is often directed toward people who are not paying attention. Think about how many purchases are made for strangers. The luxury vehicle seen by drivers you'll never meet again. The designer logo noticed by people who will forget about it tomorrow. The expensive upgrade purchased to impress coworkers who are worried about their own lives. Entire financial decisions are built around an audience that barely exists. This phenomenon has become even stronger in the age of social media. For most of human history, people compared themselves to neighbors. Today, they compare themselves to millions. A person sitting in a small apartment can instantly observe celebrities, entrepreneurs, influencers, athletes, and luxury lifestyles from around the world. The brain struggles to process this. It interprets these images as normal reference points, and suddenly, ordinary life feels inadequate. What most people don't realize is that social media often showcases consumption, not wealth. Those are not the same thing. Consumption is visible. Wealth is hidden. Consumption is what you buy. Wealth is what you keep. Consumption creates attention. Wealth creates freedom. And freedom is ultimately what money is supposed to provide. Imagine two individuals earning exactly the same income. The first spends nearly everything maintaining a high-status lifestyle. The second quietly invests a substantial portion of their earnings every month. For a few years, the first person appears more successful. They have better photos, more impressive possessions, more visible signs of achievement. But something interesting happens as time passes. The possessions begin depreciating, the investments begin compounding. The gap slowly reverses, then accelerates. Eventually, the person who appeared less successful becomes financially independent, while the person who appeared wealthy remains financially fragile. This is one of the least understood aspects of wealth building. The rewards are delayed. The applause is delayed. The evidence is delayed. You sacrifice visible status today for invisible advantages tomorrow, and that requires patience. Unfortunately, patience is difficult because society rewards appearances immediately. A luxury purchase produces instant recognition. Investing produces almost none. Nobody congratulates you for increasing your retirement account. Nobody stops you on the street because your emergency fund reached 6 months of expenses. Nobody compliments your index fund contributions. The external rewards are minimal, which means genuine wealth building often requires internal validation. You have to value future freedom more than present admiration. That sounds simple, but it is psychologically challenging because humans are wired to seek immediate rewards. Behavioral finance researchers call this present bias. We naturally place greater value on rewards available today than larger rewards available later. This explains why people struggle with saving. The benefits feel distant. The sacrifice feels immediate. The new purchase creates excitement now. Financial security feels abstract. Yet the people who build wealth consistently learn how to reverse this instinct. They begin viewing spending differently. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" they ask, "What is this costing my future?" The difference is enormous. Consider a luxury purchase costing several $1,000s. Most people evaluate the price once. Wealth builders evaluate it repeatedly. What would that money become in 10 years? 20 years? 30 years? How many future opportunities disappear when that money leaves their control? This way of thinking transforms financial decisions. Because money is never just money. Money represents options, time, flexibility, security, choice. Every dollar retained creates future possibilities. Every unnecessary dollar spent eliminates some of them. This is why many financially successful individuals become surprisingly careful with spending. Not because they are cheap, because they understand opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is largely invisible. When you spend money, you see what you receive. You rarely see what you give up. You see the luxury watch. You don't see the future investment growth. You see the upgraded vehicle. You don't see the years of financial flexibility sacrificed. You see the expensive vacation. You don't see the compound returns that never had the chance to exist. The hidden costs remain hidden, which makes overspending feel harmless. But over decades, these invisible trade-offs become enormous. This is where looking poor becomes powerful, because it creates distance from the status game. It allows you to spend based on value instead of appearance, to buy because you want something, not because you want to signal something, to make financial decisions independently rather than socially. And independence is one of the greatest advantages money can buy. Interestingly, some of the wealthiest people in history developed a deep understanding of this principle, not because they disliked luxury, but because they understood leverage. A dollar invested productively could eventually generate more dollars. A dollar spent on appearance could not. One creates future cash flow, the other creates temporary impressions. The difference compounds. What makes this especially important is that income alone rarely guarantees wealth. Many people assume financial success is primarily about earning more. Income certainly matters, but spending behavior often matters just as much. There are countless examples of high earners who remain financially stressed. Doctors, athletes, entertainers, executives, business owners. People earning impressive incomes who somehow feel trapped. How does this happen? Lifestyle expansion. As income rises, spending rises alongside it. Every raise creates new obligations. Every promotion creates new expectations. Every increase in earnings is consumed before it can become wealth. The person never feels richer because their lifestyle absorbs the difference. Behavioral researchers call this hedonic adaptation. Humans quickly become accustomed to improved circumstances. What once felt luxurious soon feels normal, then insufficient, then replaceable, then outdated, and the cycle continues. This explains why looking poor can actually be liberating. When you stop trying to maintain an image, your financial life becomes dramatically simpler. There is less pressure to upgrade, less pressure to impress, less pressure to compete. You begin focusing on what genuinely improves your life rather than what improves your image. And surprisingly, these are often very different things. A reliable emergency fund improves life. A lower stress level improves life. Investment income improves life. Freedom from debt improves life. Control over your schedule improves life. Yet many of these benefits are invisible to outsiders. Nobody can see them, which is precisely why they are often undervalued. Society tends to celebrate visible success, but invisible success frequently matters more. A person with modest possessions and substantial investments may enjoy far greater financial security than someone displaying obvious wealth. The second person attracts attention. The first person owns freedom, and freedom is ultimately the highest expression of wealth. Because money itself is not the goal. Very few people actually want money. What they want is what money can provide. The ability to choose where they live, how they spend their time, when they work, whether they can handle emergencies, whether they can support family, whether they can retire comfortably, whether they can walk away from situations they dislike. These are freedom decisions. And freedom decisions require assets, not appearances. The challenge is that freedom often looks boring during the building phase. It looks like driving the same car longer, keeping a functional phone, living below your means, investing consistently, avoiding unnecessary debt, refusing lifestyle inflation. None of these behaviors generate much attention, but they generate results, and results accumulate, year after year, decade after decade. This is where the mathematics of wealth quietly takes over. Compounding rewards patience in a way few other systems do. At first, progress appears slow, then noticeable, then remarkable, then almost unbelievable. But compounding only works when money remains invested, which means every major spending decision becomes more significant than it appears. Because you're not merely spending current dollars, you're spending future growth, future opportunities, future freedom. The wealthiest mindset may not be asking how expensive something is. It may be asking what that money could become if left alone. This perspective fundamentally changes consumption. You stop viewing restraint as deprivation. You start viewing it as ownership. You recognize that every financial decision is a trade between present comfort and future flexibility. Neither choice is inherently right or wrong. The key is making it consciously, not automatically, not because of social pressure, not because of comparison, not because someone else wants to be impressed. One of the most revealing questions a person can ask is simple. If nobody ever saw this purchase, would I still want it? The answer often exposes the true motivation. Sometimes the answer is yes, and that's perfectly fine. Other times the answer is no, which suggests the purchase was never about utility. It was about signaling. The problem with signaling is that it becomes addictive. Once external validation becomes the goal, spending can become endless. There is always another audience, another trend, another benchmark, another upgrade. But there is no equivalent addiction to financial security, because security tends to reduce anxiety rather than create more desire. The more financially secure people become, the less they often need to prove. This may explain why genuinely wealthy individuals are sometimes difficult to identify. They are not participating in the same competition. Their scorecard is different. Instead of measuring admiration, they measure ownership. Instead of measuring appearances, they measure assets. The irony is that many people spend years trying to look like the wealthy while simultaneously preventing themselves from becoming wealthy. They imitate the visible outcomes rather than the invisible process. They see the lifestyle. They don't see the decades of discipline. They see the house. They don't see the investments. They see the luxury, they don't see the sacrifices. This misunderstanding creates a dangerous shortcut mentality. People attempt to purchase the appearance of success before achieving the foundation that supports it. And foundations matter, because appearances can disappear quickly. Debt can create the illusion of wealth. Financing can create the illusion of wealth. Credit can create the illusion of wealth. But genuine wealth requires ownership. Ownership is harder, slower, less glamorous, yet far more durable. When economic conditions become difficult, this difference becomes obvious. Those dependent on appearances often struggle. Those who build financial buffers have options. And options matter most when circumstances change. This brings us to perhaps the most important lesson. Looking poor is not really about looking poor. It is about becoming immune to unnecessary status pressure. It is about feeling comfortable enough with yourself that your financial decisions no longer require external approval. It is about prioritizing long-term freedom over short-term validation. The goal is not to avoid enjoying money. The goal is not to reject every luxury. The goal is not to live a life of deprivation. The goal is to ensure that your spending serves your values rather than someone else's expectations. Because once money becomes a tool instead of a performance, everything changes. You begin buying with intention, saving with purpose, investing with patience, and living with greater clarity. The person sitting quietly in that cafe may never attract much attention. Most people will walk past without noticing. But years later, they may possess something infinitely more valuable than admiration: control. Control over their time, control over their choices, control over their future. And in the end, that is the paradox most people discover too late. The world teaches us to chase the appearance of wealth because appearances are visible. But real wealth has always been largely invisible. It lives in the investments nobody sees, the restraint nobody applauds, the opportunities nobody notices, the freedom nobody can photograph. And the moment you stop trying to look wealthy may be the exact moment you finally begin becoming wealthy.